reminder, has the recording started? I got no message at this end to tell me that it had, but perhaps it has because I can see a little red dot. Maybe that's it. Anyway,
You should
so
now.
okay, thank you. So Upper Thames branch of Butterfly Conservation, we thought we'd put this talk together because normally every year we have a meeting in the autumn where people who've joined Butterfly Conservation recently, the Upper Thames branch, can come along and find out what goes on in the branch. There are various people there that could tell you what they do, what their roles are, and we have displays that explain it even better probably than the people can. But those haven't been possible because of COVID. So we thought, let's have a presentation about who we are, the Upper Thames branch, and what we do. And not surprisingly, we, the Upper Thames branch, is actually just a group of members. There's nothing special about us. We're not magic in any way. We're just members of an organisation. And what we want to do is to save butterflies and moths. So the membership work collectively to deliver some action for butterflies and moths. And I'm very lucky that I get to sit with a group of people who are incredibly dedicated and spend hours and hours and hours helping to save the habitats usually of the butterflies and moths of our region. So it's a very active branch and we get a great deal done. Where do we cover? This map, which is to the top left, should be helpful. I think you can probably see that at the top left of the map, on the top left of the page, is the county of Oxfordshire. And next to it going right is Buckinghamshire, and right in the top corner Milton Keynes, which was carved off as a unitary authority. We tend to call that just Bucks. We don't separate it out in our thinking as a branch. And then Berkshire down the bottom equally isn't actually a county anymore. It's a whole set of unitary authorities, but we still think of it as one county, Berkshire. So we claim that we cover 3 counties. They are the same 3 counties as Beebout, the Berks, Bucks and Oxon Wildlife Trust. And there's good reason for that. It allows us to share data, to share expertise and to help each other. So it's a very good partnership that's struck up there. And that's the reason that we were set up with this format covering the same branch area, because it was obvious that working together with Beebout would be more useful than working separately. As a branch, we've got about, excuse me, as a branch, we've got about 2,300 members. And nationally, there's about 40,000. The branch is working entirely voluntarily. That is to say, there are no paid members of our branch. So everyone that does anything does it just for the love of the habitats in which the butterflies and moths live, or possibly because they're particularly keen on one particular butterfly or moth. The members subs is where we get most of our money from. So when you pay your £6 a year, that comes through to us, and we get a little bit extra from donations. That's been rather less recently than it used to be because we haven't had any events where we've been meeting with the public to get it. It's the partnerships that we can achieve with so many people, obviously with only 2,300 members and a huge area to cover, Berkshire, Oxfordshire and Buckinghamshire up to Milton Keynes. It's very difficult for us to spread ourselves out and achieve a big deal across all that area. So we've got partnerships with lots and lots and lots of different organisations, and only a few of them are in this clip that I've put down the bottom there, which is from one of the posters we've had printed recently to take to our outside displays, which are beginning again this summer. Despite the fact that I'm at home with COVID, we're going to go back out and meet people this summer. So we've had dealings with Highways England and agreements about the way they're managing some of their verges, and land at Burnwood Forest. Network Rail, they're helping us with some land where we've got Duke of Burgundy. National Grid, they've got some land around Oxford with Brown Hairstreak. The RSPB and ourselves work very closely over at Otmore now. The Ministry of Defence at Otmore and Arncott. Thames Water with a very good site near one of the Duke of Burgundy sites, and Thames Water are helping get that site ready, we hope, for the Duke to come back. TVERCA, the Thames Valley Environmental Record Centre, and the Bucks and Milton Keynes Environmental Record Centre. Both these people take our data and then they can use it to help inform planning decisions. The National Trust, we've got quite a few National Trust properties in the area, and we're working in some way or another with all of them, I think. Chiltern Rangers are a group of conservation activists. That's to say, they're a company with some trained professionals with licenses to use chainsaws and brush cutters and so on, but they bring along a whole baggage of massive amounts of kit. They bring along things like tea making equipment, which is very important, and lots of volunteers, including children and people with all sorts of disabilities of one type or another. And it makes for a great day out to be out there working with the Chiltern Rangers. And despite them being called Chiltern Rangers, they're ranging further and further afield as we manage successfully to get funding to employ them to come out and help us work for butterflies and moths across the counties. The Chiltern Society, they really are in the Chilterns, so their name is Apposite, and we work with them at a couple of sites, and I think that's the majority of the sites, the majority of the organisations, I mean, where we've got big involvement. I have just put the Parks Trust logo up there to remind you that they're very kindly hosting this meeting, as they have all the meetings this year, last year and the year before, and it's almost entirely down to Carla, who gives up her evenings, thank you Carla, to help us out. So the aim of the branch, this is my view, is to get you, the people listening now, involved with the rewarding fascination and the important conservation of butterflies and moths. I was watching some today, some butterflies, and I was thinking there's something akin to watching children. When you watch little children playing and running about and squeaking and shouting with joy, there's something like that in watching butterflies. You don't have to get involved in any way apart from just watching, and somehow you can feel that vivacity and the joy of life that they have. I bet there's a word for it, like joy de vivre, but I can't think of it. Or maybe that was it. Anyway, what we want to do is help you get involved so that you get the same positives back from being involved that those of us already involved get. And we feel that this is quite likely to start because you turn up to go on one of our guided walks. So altogether this summer, we put on 33 guided walks. I think slightly more than half have gone already. There's about a third of them left, I think. And these guided walks were deliberately designed so that wherever you live within our 3 counties, you should find one within 10 miles. You might have found several if you were very lucky and live somewhere with a hotspot nearby, but everyone should have been able to find one fairly close. And in order that we don't discourage anybody from coming, we made sure that all the walks were provided for free, and some of them are accessible by public transport. Now, that isn't possible every time, because some of the top sites that our members ask, please take us on a guided walk at ABC, are sites which are a little bit out of the way, and there is no bus or train close enough. So a few of the sites are only accessible by people who are either equipped with a car or extremely determined cyclists or walkers. But we've got some which are accessible close to town centres. And the whole point is to send out someone who knows that site and knows their butterflies and their moths, hopefully can explain a bit about the habitat and show people who live in the area what lives near them. And in this picture, you can see me trying to show people using the longest stick I could find, a purple emperor that was sitting up here in this silver birch. So unless you saw it fly in and settle, I don't think anyone would have spotted it. You'll notice that I have binoculars around my neck, and we would very strongly advise, if you're coming on our guided walks, please bring binoculars. If all the people on the guided walk try to rush in around a particular butterfly that's grabbed our attention, it's almost certain to scare it away. So we try and stand back a bit and look through binoculars at first. And if it's something like a purple emperor, you can bet your bottom dollar it will settle at the top of a tree, which makes it very hard to see without binoculars. The field trips are not just looking at the butterflies and the moths, but also the sites where we find them. We try and explain to people why those sites are better than some others. And this particular group here are looking at butterflies, some very rare ones, on a bit of land that we manage near Beaconsfield called Holtspur Bottom. And I think you can see the picture was taken deliberately to show the flowers, but you can see how floristically rich this site is. And it's no accident. I mean, obviously we're looking after it, so we have deliberately made it so that there are lots of flowers. And one of the things you notice about almost all the best sites is the range of flowering plants, because of course butterflies and moths feed on caterpillars. No, they don't. Butterflies and moths have caterpillars that feed on plants. Now, to find out about our walks and hopefully to discover one near you that sounds interesting and you'd like to join, you can get all the information from first of all looking in Hairstreak. So the issue 114, which goes up till the end of July with its walk list, that's probably your first port of call. And at this point, I must say, please tell us at the end if for some reason you don't get the Hairstreak. Now, the Hairstreak should come to every member electronically, unless you've specifically asked that you need it on paper. And as all of you are joining a Zoom meeting or a Teams meeting, I suspect you've all been sent yours electronically. But we constantly hear of members who say, oh, I didn't know that. I've not been getting one. So please let us know if you're not getting one, because we need to address that and make sure it does come to all our members. There's also the same walks listed, in fact, more walks, because sometimes we add extra walks in. So I think there's 5 more on the website than were in Hairstreak. And if you go to the Butterfly Conservation Upper Thames branch website and look in the section called, first of all, events, and then choose guided walks, you'll find the list of the walks here. And in each case, if you want to find out about it, you just click the more info and it takes you straight through to more details about that particular walk. For instance, telling you where the location to meet up is, whether there are any particular hazards that you might need to be concerned about before you set off, and whether you need to bring anything special on that occasion to make a great success of the walk. So Hairstreak newsletter is probably the first place to look when that comes to you. But then everything's on the website. So if you can't find the Hairstreak newsletter, because electronic things tend to get lost sometimes in the email, then have a look at the website. Everything is there, all the walks. Apart from the 3 this weekend. The new members walks are not on the website and they weren't in Hairstreak. So this was a deliberate ploy. We heard 2 years back from some people who'd recently joined and went on their first walk, and they were slightly disappointed because there were 8 or 9 other people on the walk who knew each other and, not surprisingly perhaps, started chatting to each other, and the 2 that were new felt a bit left out. Well, not a bit left out, they felt left out. That's really bad. We do say to the walk leaders, don't leave anyone trailing along at the back, make sure everyone's involved. But on this particular occasion, that seems not to have happened. So we've set up this year 3 walks, one in Berkshire, one in Oxfordshire, one in Bucks, and they're specifically for people who haven't been on a walk. They're for people who are perhaps a bit unsure about what walks are about, and they're not, definitely not, for experts to come in and tell everyone else what they're looking at. Now, there is one unfortunate issue which has arisen, and that's me having COVID, because I was supposed to be leading the Oxfordshire walk on Saturday, and unfortunately I can't be there. But the chap called Ivan Wright, who knows the Shotover site like the back of his hand, he's been the warden there for I think 12 years, maybe even longer. But Ivan has agreed to carry on with the walk without me, and that might be a great relief to those who are going, because they won't have to listen to me. But I hope you'll enjoy the walk and get to meet each other, and there won't be the same pressure perhaps that people can find when they go on a walk with lots of people who seem to know each other and everything else. We don't just do outdoor walks, we also do indoor events of various sorts. So indoor meetings include a sort of traditional sort that haven't been happening quite so much. But here we have an audience of people gathered together to listen to various speakers. And one of those speakers is here. This is Caroline Bullman from the national team, telling us about conservation successes with landscape scale projects, which was a very interesting talk. And it's at meetings like this one, where this audience was sitting, that we talk about what the branch does. So it's that sort of thing which hasn't happened, and that's why I'm speaking this evening. We also have public facing events, I think that's what they're described as, where any people can turn up, and we have a marquee, and we put up our posters, and we have caterpillars and moths and so on. And we find that the public love them because it's livestock, which always takes everyone's fascination. And you can see how this little girl absolutely loves this privet hawk caterpillar. Not the only one, but that made a particularly good picture because her hat framed it so nicely. All of these sorts of events, they're also on the website, and so too the online events, the things like the one that we're at tonight. So if you wanted to catch up with some of our previous online events, ones which have already been recorded, they're available there, and the ones which have not yet been presented, they're available too. One last word about this, which is of this type of meeting, the public facing. We've got one coming up in a place called Silwood, which is Imperial College's out of London centre. And in 2 weeks' time at Silwood, we're having an event there where it's for families. And we'll be taking caterpillars and moths, and we'll be doing our very best to get lots and lots of families involved. And one of the things for certain we'll be doing is pushing the big butterfly count, which I assume everyone knows starts on Friday. So that's the annual national biggest push to get members of the public involved in recording, perhaps for the first time. So I think I'm sort of reiterating what I've already said here, but if you want to know anything about the branch, if something occurs to you after this evening's talk and you think, well, Nick didn't mention that, no one else asked the question, I should have thought to say it then. But you can probably find the answer, if there's something you'd like to know, by looking at the Upper Thames branch website. It's amazing how much stuff is in here. Our webmaster, David Hastings, I can only assume, because I know he goes out looking at butterflies by day and that he goes looking at moths by night, that he has some sort of pact with the devil, which allows him to live all his life twice, because he manages to run this and put tremendous amount of detail up here, refreshing it daily with new information as it comes in. Tremendous website. Changing tack slightly, but here's another way that we hope you'll get involved. I said earlier about how when I was watching some butterflies today, they just calmed me down and made me feel very peaceful and cheerful. And that's what they do for most people, I think. So we would encourage you to go out and look at them. If what you want to do is go and look at them and enjoy them and not worry about what they're called or precisely how many there are, that's absolutely fine. But we would appreciate it if you do ever feel the urge that you should record what you've seen and tell people, record the sightings and let us know. And the way that you record your sightings can be fairly varied. I mean, for instance, you could do what this chap Stephen is doing here and recording. He's looking at Duke of Burgundy, and there's one down here in the cowslips, but you can't see it. So he's recording a single species on his own. He's out just, well, I was there taking a picture, but he does single species counts walking about. Over here, we've got a team of people looking for some extremely large blue and green caterpillars, which you'd think you might be able to see, but you can't quite in that picture. There are some there. And we form up teams to go looking for larval stages and for eggs and pupa each year. So there's something different. You can join teams to go looking for adults as well. So we do it from individuals going out and teams going out, but all of it, the whole point is to record as much data as possible, because all that data is so helpful to us. So you can record in lots of different ways. There is moth trapping, which you can do in your own garden, or you can join up with other people and moth trap in a group. And the moth trapping tends to get recorded a little bit ad hoc, in the sense that there's no time limit and you don't have to have any particular type of trap. You can even do moth trapping by just shining an ordinary very bright torch onto a white sheet and seeing what comes to fly onto it. Some people like hanging out wine ropes, which are, as they sound, bits of rope, string, hessian, which you've dropped into wine and beer or molasses and then hung up. And some moths are irresistibly attracted and will sit there feeding for ages. We've also got, moving away from the moths for a minute, we've got the big butterfly count, which is what these three are doing here. I suspect that that's Granny, Mum and daughter. And these sheets if you like the paper sheets, are available again. But the National Society decided, and I agree with them, it's really time people got away from printing off bits of paper and using the resource to do that and moved over to the app. So there's the big butterfly count app, which you can put on your phone. It's got all this detail, but it's all electronic. It has, I think, three advantages. One, you almost always got your phone with you. So if you start to see things, even when you hadn't expected to, you can record them. Whereas you might not have taken a piece of paper out with you because it's a nuisance to carry. It's so easy to use these apps and record what's there. And you can use the same app to record time and time again. But once the paper's been filled in, well, you need another one really, don't you? You've got to print another one off. And then finally, and best of all, when you've filled in the paper version, you've then got to sit down at your computer and type out what you wrote on the paper. Whereas if you complete your data on this Big Butterfly Count app, which is completely free from either the App Store or Google Play, then it all goes direct to Butterfly Conservation without you having to record it twice. You just put it in once and press upload and off it's gone. If you want to do something a bit more than just record during the Big Butterfly Count time, then there is a very similar app called I Record Butterflies, which is superb. It does all the UK butterflies and allows you to record whatever you see literally any day of the year. And one of the really clever things about it is that wherever you are, assuming you've enabled your GPS and let your phone tell the app where you are, it will tell you the butterflies it expects you to see in order. So it uses other people's sightings that have already been sent in to say, they're at that place. And on this date over the last 3 years, the butterfly most people saw was small white. We'll put that first. Then meadow brown, then peacock, and so on. And you get a list that comes up and it's incredibly accurate. So if you see something which isn't on the list, you know that perhaps I ought to check that because it's not been suggested. It's very helpful. You can record things which are not suggested, but it's a very good clue that you might need to double check if you think you've seen something which the app doesn't suggest. Okay, other sorts of recording, a bit like Stephen. This is a chap called Stuart. You don't have to have a name beginning with S to do this, by the way. He's out doing what's called a transect, which is very similar to something else called the Wider Countryside Butterfly Scheme. Both of them are standardized surveys where you count the butterflies a certain distance from you as you walk slowly along a fixed route. And the transect scheme, you have to walk that every week. The Wider Countryside Butterfly Scheme, you have to walk between twice and 4 times a year. So different amounts of intensity, but the idea is to get standardized data so that you can quite literally compare the walk you did at site A with any other site in the UK and make sense of the data because it's been recorded in the same standardized way. And down at the bottom, just to show that this doesn't stop just for bad weather, people suitably kitted out searching for butterfly eggs in the winter, because quite a lot of butterflies, the rare hair streaks, the ones we usually look for, are easier to find when their eggs, which are hibernating, are revealed by the leaves falling off the trees on which the eggs were laid during the winter. So if you know that your species has laid eggs on a plant which is relatively low and you don't need to climb a tree to find it, you can walk along and you can count the eggs, which are more numerous than the adults will be in the summer, because of course quite a lot of the eggs will get eaten during the winter. Birds like blue tits, and we think small rodents find them and eat them. And then the caterpillars, of course, are extremely tasty and they get eaten by all sorts of things, spiders, beetles, birds again. And even when they get to the pupal stage, they probably still fall foul to birds. And when the butterflies fly, if they're lucky, they fly around for a few days, but they too disappear often into spiders. So the eggs which sit all winter on bare twigs are often easiest to find. So there's all sorts of recording schemes, and there should be something to suit everybody. And it's a lot of fun to take part, especially if you do it, depends on your personality, I suppose, but I can say especially if you take part as part of a team, because then you can bounce your ideas off other people. Although I accept, just occurred to me, some people would prefer to do it alone, and that's fine too, because we've got schemes like that for those who want it. We don't just collect the data so that we can tell you how quickly certain species are becoming even rarer. We collect it because when it's all been collated, pulled together and published, that data actually goes off and it informs action both at a local level for us, and it informs at a government level. So here's some different examples of the ways that data that's been collected gets used. So at the top left here, the United Kingdom Butterfly Monitoring Scheme, which does what it says, collects all the data from all the standardized butterfly monitoring. And it publishes a very, very important report that everyone agrees is probably world beating in terms of the complexity and depth of data inside it. And that report goes off to the government and informs government. I can't remember precisely what they call them now, national environment indicators or something, but it helps the government decide whether some of their conservation strategies are working, whether they need to be tweaked. And it helps the European Union as well, because there is nothing equivalent in Europe, nothing anything like as good. So they use our reports, even though we're no longer in Europe, and they've just recently published a complete new structure to improve conservation in Europe. And a lot of the work on habitats is based on our UK butterfly monitoring scheme data. It's so sad, I'm going to get political for a minute. Not only have we left Europe, but our government have thrown away the EU Habitats Directive. And despite promises about all sorts of things that were going to come in to be even better, there is nothing to replace it. The countryside stewardship, which was a spin-off from the EU's agricultural policy, which wasn't a very good policy, we all agree, did at least pay farmers to do something a bit better. That's all come to an end, and so far there's nothing to replace it. There's stuff in preparation, but nothing seems to be finished. And I do worry when we listen to our government talking about how they want to have tax cuts and there isn't any money for frivolous stuff, that they're going to say that they can't afford to pay farmers to look after nature. But things like the UK Butterfly Monitoring Scheme prove that where they have been putting money in, many of those schemes have been really effective. And one of the things from all this data we collect is that we can show that those species which were most at risk and where we've targeted conservation effort, we've been able to monitor and show it's worked. And other species which have unfortunately not had conservation effort directed at them because there are too many species to look after all of them, their numbers have dived. So unquestionably, the work that's done on the back of these reports is worthwhile. A bit less serious in some respects, because this is for local rather than national consumption, is the atlas of where butterflies, only butterflies I'm afraid, are across the whole of our 3 counties. So if you thought you'd seen something, or if you perhaps more likely wanted to go out and see a species you'd never seen, you could look at this book, which we've still got copies of, we could sell you, and it would tell you where you could go and look. The moths, moths don't have a publication. In fact, I think what they've got is better, but it depends if you like computers or books. So this is an interactive website where you can pull up data. If you want, you can search for specific species and see where they live. You can find out the times at which they fly, even the times of night at which you're most likely to trap them. You can look to see what's flying in your area on a particular night. You can look through the whole year, see what would be around on any particular date. So let's suppose you've got some favorite person's birthday, someone you've always idolized, and you thought, I'll see what's flying on their birthday where I live or where they live, and it will tell you. It's superb. So this Upper Thames moth, a massive amount of work, and really does repay the time if you have a look at it, because it's chock full of information about the moths in our area, some of which are incredibly rare. And then down the bottom, there's a team. It's a rather poor picture. It's rather a long time ago I took that. A picture of people who've just been out doing some work to try and help some rare butterflies. And this area here, they were clearing some very thick woodland because it's a site where we had previously seen dark green fritillary. And I'm very pleased to report that dark green fritillary have been seen again in that site this year, definitely once and probably twice. So the work that's been going on there to make it a bit less thick woodland and more suitable, the scrubby edge habitat that dark greens prefer, that seems to have paid off. And this is all down to the fact that we can look at the data over years and years and see how things are changing and spot, oh, this site's lost all its something, a particular plant has vanished, and the number of this particular butterfly has gone too. Let's see what we can do, see if we can restore the balance. Obviously, we can't tackle every species. I already mentioned this, didn't I? But that's what I was trying to remember the name, UK Biodiversity Indicators. And it features our butterfly data, along with data from other groups, of course. And the key findings go on to do all sorts of good work, which if you actually wanted to go to the UK BMS website and look, you'd find that they even explain how the government use their statistics and how the official statistics are produced, so that you can see how they're very, very vigorously rigorously being checked to make sure that they are absolutely solidly significant and not merely suggestive. But the main reason for doing everything, hello, one of my pictures has turned itself on its side, never mind. The main reason for doing everything by way of collecting data is to inform on conservation action, because we find out about things which are disappearing, vanishing from the landscape, and then we go and see if we can do something about it. So at this site, you can see some children working to remove some overgrown hawthorn, because we know that this site has a population of Duke of Burgundy, but there was a real concern that numbers were falling on the part of the site where these children are working. They were brought along by the Chiltern Rangers. I mentioned earlier, they bring lots of children with them. So they're working to remove scrub from a part of the site which we know previously had as many dukes as other parts, but had become more overgrown, and there were fewer dukes. So we thought, well, let's take some of the scrub out, and it has worked, but the number of dukes hasn't come back quite as well as we'd hoped, but it certainly improved things. Down the bottom, going around anti-clockwise, this chap here, Sean, helps us by walking a transect on a site next to a golf course. He doesn't walk a transect on a golf course, but next to it. And he also plays golf on that golf course. And he spoke to them about improving their roughs. And here he is digging in some horseshoe vetch plants into the roughs of the golf course where he's a member. And the greenkeeper is absolutely happy about it. And the members are delighted. They actually, and I'm not joking, they put their names down on a list, and every year we have to turn people away because we say we're sorry, we're not taking more than 30 members to give them a walk around and show them what butterflies are on their site, and every year there are more than 30 want to come. So there's real interest amongst people on golf courses and so on if you can get in with the right person, and Sean was the right way in here because he was prepared to take on the mantle of leading the work. Here's a group of volunteers out building a windbreak. This was a completely different site from any we've looked at earlier, where there was open grassland. It wasn't too scrubby, but in fact there wasn't enough of anything to break up the wind. So instead of planting a lot of scrub, because we wanted to retain the open nature of the site and keep it open grassland, we built this large bank of soil so that when the wind blows in, it doesn't rush across the site, but there are some sheltered spots in the lee of the wind. Up here, sorry about this one turning sideways. I can't understand how that's happened, but it doesn't really matter. These people are planting elm trees, disease resistant, I think, or possibly white elm, because it does look pretty wet where they are. And that's to help the white letter hair streak and, oh dear, I've forgotten the name of the moth that feeds. Somebody is probably screaming it at me. I expect you're all more knowledgeable than I am about this. I'm afraid I've completely forgotten the name of the rare moth that feeds on elm, but both the white letter hair streak and that moth are only rare now because elm trees are so rare. So we're going out and planting them, and loads of people are happy to have them put into their land because they miss the elm trees too. They're such nice architectural features in the landscape when they get big. And down here we've got some members, Brenda's on this call this evening, putting up some temporary fencing because some parts of sites really do need a bit of grazing to get down the longer, tougher vegetation. But there are sections of that site where the vegetation is a bit more sensitive and heavy grazing could damage it. So they're erecting temporary fencing, and our monitoring allows us to say, well, this species isn't doing so well here because this plant's being eaten out. So let's fence this bit off before the cattle or the sheep come in. So we can fine tune what we do quite extensively based on the massive amount of recording that gets done in the area. And I already mentioned it, one more picture just to show the Hotspur Bottom Reserve. So if anyone says to you, does the Upper Thames branch have any reserves, then you can say, well, there's one just outside Beaconsfield in the Hotspur Valley, which, as you can see, is a mixture of chalk grasslands, scrub and some woodland here, but that's actually a wood belonging to Beaconsfield Town Council called Cutthroat Wood, and we don't have any direct involvement there. But that's perhaps the majority, definitely not all, that we do. So we go out and we meet with landowners and we try and explain to them how tiny changes in what they do could improve habitat for butterflies and moths. And where we can, we try to find ways that they could do a bit less, or at least spend a bit less, and get a positive result for butterflies and moths, because that's always good news. We organise groups to go out and survey sites, and this lot are out looking at Otmore and Felicity. I think that's you there. So Felicity already knows that going out in a team to survey a site can be a good thing because we can all help each other then. I mean, not only do more pairs of eyes spot more stuff, but there's usually someone who can tell you what you're looking at has a name, if only they could remember it, whereas you knew that, but you couldn't think what the name was either. I'm not making much sense there, but what I mean to say is we support each other in agreeing that it is something strange and we'll have to look it up later. And then we do, and we email each other and we know what we've seen. There are particular surveys for key species, and it might be that you think you'd like to help some particularly rare species, but there's not much you can do because you know it only flies on private sites or sites with very restricted access. And these very restricted access sites, we usually do have ways in. You have to be part of a known team to get into them. So we've got people who form part of a team to go looking on MOD land for silver-studded blue, for instance. We've got people who go on private land looking for the wood whites in woods where you're not allowed normally. And we've got several woods where people go in looking for things like purple emperor and white admiral, again in private woods. So because the organizer, the landowners of these sites, the people who are responsible for those sites, know that we're a bona fide organization and we collect data and do something with it, they're happy usually to allow us to say, these are the people that we're intending to bring. They'll be with you this date. Is that okay? And they normally welcome us and they like the feedback. They like to know what's flying and living on their land. Other members, perhaps people who can't get out because they haven't got the time, do things at home like growing food plants. And these are some cowslips that were grown for us that were planted out at a site near the one where we saw the children chopping down the hawthorn in the hope that the Duke of Burgundy will spread. So it's all about going out and enjoying butterflies. It's all about going out and being there with the moths and just reveling in their sheer vivacity. But you wouldn't have that without the habitats, and we need to collect data so that we know how the habitats are performing. So to really enjoy butterflies, I think you've got to get involved in doing some recording and having some feel of whether things are getting better or worse, and knowing that the actions that will follow are based on a bit of science rather than just, well, let's see what happens, which isn't the best way when things are already quite perilous. We don't want to be responsible for pushing them over the edge. I just thought I'd put in a gratuitous picture of some pretty butterflies and moths and remind you that they're all fantastic. Quite often I find people are very surprised that Some of the prettiest things are moths, and the duller ones are butterflies. So just in case anyone isn't sure, this is a garden tiger moth. This little moth has a very long name, but he's known as Jeff, because his second name is Jeffarella. And this is a 6-spot burnet. This fantastic creature is a vapor, a caterpillar, whereas these butterflies are relatively dull by comparison, and this one. And you could say this isn't very colourful, it's all one colour. But anyway, they're all incredibly beautiful. And it's the way they move about, the way they live their lives that makes them so absolutely capturing. I think they just, for me, they make my life worthwhile when I'm out with them. So I said I wouldn't be very long. And I'm hoping that that's given you a flavour of the stuff that we do. And I say we do because I really do want to stress that. There's an immense amount of work done by a huge number of people. And not everybody's doing a great deal, but a lot of people are doing something. And that's what we're hoping we can encourage more people to get involved in doing a bit. Because the more of us that do a bit, the greater our impact will be. I think it's going to be better to have 1,000 people doing something and have one person trying to do 1,000 things. That's obvious, isn't it? So thank you very much. I'm going to stop sharing if I can find a way to do that, which might be there, and go back to the bit where if people want to ask questions, they can ask questions. And I bet Brenda will be willing to answer any questions about membership issues. I'll drop her in it by saying that. Don't shake your head, Brenda.
Thanks, Nick. I just want to say I've stopped recording now, so people don't have to be so shy at asking questions.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Carla. Who's going to crack first? In that case, I shall ask a question of Brenda. Did I miss anything that you were expecting me to discuss, Brenda?
No, I don't think so. I just interested to know if the people that have signed up to go to the walks on Saturday are able to still go, and if there's anybody on this call that hasn't said they're going, which one would they like to go to?
Okay, well, I'll mute myself while those of you that are going on Saturday answer that question.
Yes.
Lorraine?
Yeah, I'm still planning to go. Is there any other advice regards what you should take on the walk? How long
Sorry,
are they for? I'm not too sure. How long is the walk?
Are you going on the Oxfordshire walk?
Yeah.
Well, he said sort of an hour to 90 minutes. It won't be an all-day affair. And obviously, depending, there's an awful lot of noise somewhere.
Put myself.
It sounds like someone's got a radio or a television on in the background, doesn't it?
Right, that's better.
Yeah, that's gone.
That's better. Yeah, that's absolutely fine, Brenda. So apart from binoculars, then, is there anything, and the obvious things like water, is there anything else that is useful to take when you go on butterfly walks?
Well, suntan lotion. You know, make sure you've got, if you wear hats, wear a hat, but apparently Ivan said there's quite a lot of wooded areas, so be aware that there could be sort of horseflies, or just have maybe cover your arms or have something to cover your arms.
Okay, thank you.
I'll make 2 suggestions if I may. I'll jump in. I'm good at jumping in on other people's questions and answers. I take a camera, because you're probably going to see some really wonderful stuff and you might be able to get a picture. But also, before you go, if you haven't, I'd download either the Big Butterfly Count app or the iRecord Butterfly app, because then if you see something and you're not quite sure what it is, you can look it up on the app. It's a lot easier to carry that in your phone than it is to carry a heavy textbook. And by the time you've paged through to the right page, the butterfly's flown away. That the phone, especially the iRecord Butterfly app, it gives you the things it expects you to find at that site as the first ones to come up. So it's very likely that what you're looking at and thinking, oh, what's that? I'm sure I've seen that. You open your iRecord Butterfly app and it will be on the first page of the first 6 suggestions. That's entirely up to you. If you don't like mobile phones, I can understand. You'll think that's a rubbish idea. I'll take my textbook. But I'd throw that in. Rather than worry about horseflies, I'd take a good app on my phone.
Okay, just confirm with Brenda. I'm also coming along on Saturday morning to Hotspur. You mentioned parking there. Are the gates sometimes opened at Hotspur then to drive in?
The gate will be open on Saturday.
So we can drive through it, well, up to the second gate, or?
No, you come along Riding Lane.
Yeah.
And then there's the entrance to the reserve, and then there's an area where we can leave our cars.
Okay. Yeah, when I've been there before, there's so that the parking under the tunnel was a bit tricky.
No.
No, okay, that's fine.
No, when we have events, we open the gates.
Lovely, and that's for a couple of hours, is it?
I should imagine so. Yes. Depends what we see and how slowly we walk, but
is there a chance of seeing any black hair streak?
No. No, there aren't any on that site.
There aren't. No, okay. I'll try a different site on that one.
Yes.
Right, thanks.
And you'll need to try a different year, David. They finish now.
Have they completely? Okay.
Well, to the very best of my knowledge, yes.
What note did you say?
We had a message from Stuart Hodges, who looks after that species. He's its so-called species champion, and he sent around a message saying he thought that one seen on, I believe it was the 6th of July, could be considered the last, because people have been out looking since quite extensively and no one has seen one.
Right.
And that's not unusual. They do normally finish quite early in July, and this year's been relatively sunny, so that, as you know, butterflies live their lives according to how hot it is when they're alive. The hotter it is, the shorter their life, because they fly about more each day. So sort of wear their batteries out a bit faster.
And it's too early for the brown hair streak?
It depends. In Sussex and Surrey, they've already got brown hair streaks flying, but I'm afraid you won't find that at Hotspur either.
No.
So you need to go up to where Carla lives for black hair streak, and just south of Carla, North Bucks for brown hair streak too, or across into Oxfordshire.
Do you ever do as a group, so try to get together and see all the species that are that you'd expect to see during the course of a summer?
Not precisely. There was once, for 3 years running, one of the members led a walk to see 25 species in a day.
Wow.
And they went to 4 different sites. So they started, I don't know, something like 9 o'clock in the morning at one site and finished at about 6 o'clock in the evening at a 4th. And on one occasion they managed 26, but they usually managed about 23 species. That was just one day at the beginning of July. So such ideas have been tried, but you have to be fairly, what's the word? You have to have quite a bit of stamina to go at it like that all day. And so I don't think it was all that popular with more than about 4 or 5 people.
No, I guess not over a day, but maybe over the summer period when.
Well, yes, if you, we do. Sorry, Brenda, I always do this. I can't help myself. Sorry, but we do go to. If you came on all of the walks, no one could. But if you came on all the walks we advertised, you would see all the species that fly in our area. So every single species that flies in our area has been targeted by Peter Philp, who put together the walks program. So it would have been possible to see every species, and it will be again next year, I'm sure. Yeah. Sorry, Brenda, I'll shut up.
It's all right, you carry on.
Brenda, myself and David are due to come to the Hotspur walk on Saturday.
Yeah.
So we've never been there. So what's the road that the reserve is actually on?
It's Riding Lane.
Oh, I see. All right. Okay, then.
It's along like Riding Lane. There are instructions it's quite a narrow lane, and there are virtually no passing places. I tend to park at the top in Cherry Tree Road, and I think I put that on the details of the
Yes.
walk.
Yeah, I've got that. Yeah.
But you can drive down Riding Lane and
Right.
cross your fingers and hope. And then there is somewhere to park when you get there because the gate will be open.
Right. Okay then. Thank you.
Well, maybe we've exhausted all the questions.
No, I've got something else actually I wanted to ask.
Please do.
I've got the Big Butterfly Count app, which I've had since last year when I used it. And a month or so ago, I went into it and it said, sorry, you can't do it yet. It hasn't opened. But I've actually found I've been able to use it for at least the last 5 days. Is that what should have happened? Or not?
I'm afraid I can't tell you. I believe the instructions are that you should update it to make it into the 2022 version. I haven't tried on my own phone yet, but I did receive something in an email from the National Society saying, don't forget to tell your members that the Big Butterfly app should be updated so it works properly. But I wouldn't be surprised if it does work. Officially, they don't want data from the last 5 days on it, but they won't just throw it away. So if you have recorded things and you send it in, I expect it will be captured somewhere, but they won't be able to use it as part of the official count.
No. Okay.
It is useful, isn't it? Because it
Yeah,
does the commonest species.
very useful. Yes.
The I Record Butterflies app is slightly better because it includes more species. So
Just
things that you will see.
Just done it while we sat there.
All right. Okay, good.
Okay, thanks.
And I'm sorry, Lorraine and Felicity, I won't be there to answer your multitudinous questions about the way the branch operates on Saturday. You can believe me, I think I'd much rather be there walking through the woods and the fields at Shotover than sat in my little dingy bedroom with the sun blasting in, cooking me. But there you go. My wife says I'm not allowed out until I'm better. She's an absolute monster. Okay.
Because you're not suffering too much, Nick. That's the main thing.
I am dreadfully. I shall need a beer, I think, after this. So, very nice to see everybody. Thank you so much for giving up your time. I shan't delay anyone any longer if we're all finished. But seriously, I'm willing to answer any more questions if there are any. No? Let's say bye-bye then, everyone.
Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very
Bye-bye.
much.
No, thank
Yeah.
you. Bye.
Thanks, Nick.
Bye.
Bye.
Enjoy your walks,
Very
people.
I'm very jealous that you're all
Yeah.
going for walks on Saturday, and I have to pull up Himalayan balsam.
Oh, that
Oh,
sounds fun.
lovely.
Will you be standing in water? At least it'll be cool.
Well, there is that.
Okay.
Take
Thank
care.
you very much, Carla.
You're welcome.
Always a pleasure. Thanks a lot.
See you
Bye.
later. Bye.
Bye.
Ending the meeting.